Have you ever truly feared losing something? And I don't mean something trivial, I mean something that means a lot to you. It's irreplaceable, and should you lose it, nothing would ever be the same. I remember playing The Last of Us on the PS3 when it was released back in 2013. The world was a very different place, pre-coronavirus and pre-me being a dad. And I remember really enjoying it. I loved the setting, the gameplay, the visuals, the brutality, the situations, the characters, pretty much everything. But I was a different person back then. Well, I was still me, but like I said, this was before I was a dad. I was inspired to revisit the game after watching the TV series, so I picked up The Last of Us Part 1 on the PS5. What I wasn't expecting was how hard it would hit me, and how much of an emotional roller coaster I'd go through, again, but different somehow. I think I first noticed that something felt different when watching the TV series. I found the first episode the hardest to watch. Despite having a good idea what was going to happen, short of there being any considerable changes made, I struggled watching it. I almost teared up as Sarah was gunned down, Joel holding on to her, panicked, heartbroken. When I played the game for the first time, I remember feeling sad at what happened. Poor guy losing his daughter, etc. But it's just a game. I remember thinking it was a great opening, that it set up the game perfectly, though not much more. But when I played The Last of Us Part 1, something was very different. At the start of the game, I found myself not wanting to progress. At first I just thought I was taking in the new visuals and taking my time with the game, but I could feel myself hesitating, overly checking every room. At first I just thought it's because I'd played it before, trying to notice the smaller details, but I kept hesitating. I don't know if it's because I knew what was going to happen to Sarah. The idea of trying to delay the inevitable seems foolish in hindsight. It's just a game. As silly as it sounds, at one point I remember almost considering turning it off and coming back to it at another time, as I could already feel myself becoming emotional. Not again. Can I really go through this again? As a parent, the thought of losing a child can be deeply distressing and emotionally charged. It's difficult to imagine there being anything more painful than the loss of a child. It's interesting that at the start of the game you play as Sarah. I feel that played into the intensity of my feelings a lot, placed into the shoes of a character, unaware of what's to come. The cruel, harsh realities that life can be uncertain, cruel, unfair, and far too short. It generated for me a horrible sense of hopelessness. One thing I love about video games is that it can offer a safe space to explore all manner of experiences and the feelings generated from the consequences of those experiences. And as soon as shiz starts to go down, the game becomes very frantic. Every decision matters, but despite doing everything right, it will always end with Sarah's death. A reminder that death can happen to anyone at any time. Playing that moment again wasn't easy, as Joel attends to Sarah, who's visibly terrified. Tommy looks on shocked, unknowing what to do. Sarah fades as Joel pleads, before rocking her back and forth in his arms, in disbelief, broken. Just to say, I don't want anyone thinking that I'm suggesting you need to be a parent to feel something, to empathise, to find this moment heartbreaking. I'm just saying it was very different for me since being a parent. Eventually, we meet Ellie. The relationship formed between Joel and Ellie is very different. Ellie's not his biological daughter, and as we're all aware, the relationship starts off as one of necessity, a means to an end. There's clear hostility from the outset, but the relationship wonderfully transitions throughout the events in the game, creating a unique bond between the two. Joel finds a reason for living, rather than just surviving.
I used to be addicted to soap, but I'm clean now.
Alright, I've actually never heard that.
There's numerous moments throughout the game that death is around every corner. Life can end in an instant. Visiting Bill, we see his ex-partner Frank has ended his life after being bitten. But for me, one of the most heartbreaking moments in the game is teaming up with brothers Henry and Sam. It's almost analogous to Joel and Ellie. And again, everything changes so incredibly quickly. For me, one of the most poignant scenes in the game is Henry. Clearly in distress after having to shoot his brother Sam, with minimal hesitation ends his own life. Clearly the thought of a life without his brother wasn't a life worth having. That hit hard. but it's just a game. A lot of the time, it's not just the tense and brutal moments with raiders or infected that are impactful, but also the downtime in between. The questions that Ellie asks, the conversations they have, as they learn more about each other. You also see Ellie change in other ways. After Joel's trust in her grows, she becomes active with her firearm, more involved, and will even point out items for you. But it's all about getting to know someone, and as my daughter has been growing up, it's been interesting to watch her develop her own likes, interests, hobbies, often things I'd have never anticipated. I particularly like how Joel starts to shout out to Ellie that he's found another comic that she likes. The bond that slowly develops between Joel and Ellie is wonderful to see, and is a big part of why I feel the game was so impactful. I'm not sure the exact moment that she essentially becomes a surrogate daughter, but I guess to me there's a considerable relationship change when he initially tries to offload Ellie onto Tommy and her reaction.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you. So don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
I would say I think there's a line in the TV show that isn't in the game, and I think it was well done. Between Tommy and Joel, where he says how he fears that he wouldn't be able to keep Ellie safe, how he fears failing her. And I think that moment hit me quite a bit watching the show. One thing I also noticed is how in life you just know when something is up with your kid, even when they're trying not to show it. The way something is said, subtle differences in the tone of their voice, body language, you just know. And there's a great moment in both the game and the TV show like this, and Joel recognises it. Obviously the game is different knowing what's going to happen in the end, but it doesn't stop something impacting you. Surprises, things you'd forgotten, and moments that are just horrific to experience. I'm not a physical person, I'm unlikely to be violent, but the thought of being in a situation like this is horrific to think about. Having to take the life of another to keep someone safe. In terms of the brutality of fighting other humans in the game, it's one that starts off as a necessity, but one that becomes more than just about staying alive. It's keeping Ellie safe, because Joel cares. And you keep Ellie safe, no matter the cost. So it brings us to the ending part of the game. What are your thoughts? Knowing what's going to happen to Ellie, that she will be sacrificed to try and find a potential cure, becomes too much for Joel to take. Whether or not you think Joel did the right thing, after what Joel's experienced, can you blame him? Joel just can't cope with that loss again. I'm not sure I could cope with it once, let alone twice. Plus, there's no guarantee that finding a cure would work. The ending is incredibly tense as you move your way around the hospital with fireflies everywhere. It's also one of my favourite end sequences to a game I've ever played. It's not an overly long fight against an overly powerful infected boss, it's a grounded ending that fits perfectly into the narrative. Ellie isn't my daughter, but neither was Sarah, and after everything there's no way in hell I'm letting anything happen to her. The actual moment he gets to Ellie is almost too much. I can't believe I could be so violent to people literally cowering in fear. After rescuing Ellie, she confronts Joel and he lies. What do you make of that? It brought up many feelings for me. Are there times where it's okay to lie as a parent, to protect them? There's always going to be regrets, things we wish we did differently as a parent, and some things we can never take back. I remember at the end of playing the game the first time, I'd never felt so conflicted. On one hand, we'd gone through this entire journey to save humanity. On the other hand, we've gone through this whole journey to keep Ellie safe. Maybe Joel is selfish, but I get it. What's the point in saving the world if she's not in it? At least it's just a game. Thanks for watching. If you got this far, I really appreciate it. I know it's something very different to what I usually make, so I'd appreciate any feedback. Maybe check out one of my other videos if you fancy it. Bye bye.